It is my really great pleasure to introduce to you the speaker today, Salvatore Ceccarelli. He is one of the heroes of plant breeding. He has been developing concepts and results in participatory plant breeding over the past 40 years, actually. Not only with leguminous plants, but especially also with barley. He has been working in Aleppo for a long time on this. And today, Salvatore will present to us experiments in the south of Italy on legume mixture planting and cooking. And the floor is all yours, Salvatore. It's a great honor to have you here with us today. Please.
Salvatore, you still need to unmute yourself.
You are still muted, Salvatore.
Thank you very much, Benny, for the introduction. In the first part of the presentation, I will say a few general concepts about the mixtures and evolutionary populations, starting with a very simple questions. Why mixtures and evolutionary populations? Well, the answer is that because this is one way in which we can address some of the major planet problems that you are all aware of. Particularly the continuous loss of biodiversity with all its consequences. But also addressing the issue of the seed, because the problem is that who is the owner of the seed? Is just one person with all the other waiting to get a share, or the seed is a share among many? In the case of biodiversity, I would like to draw your attention that there is a contradiction in science because several scientific papers are telling us all the time how biodiversity is important for food security, for resilience, but also for our health. And on the other hand, the science which is producing the varieties which will eventually end up in our plate, namely plant breeding, has gone almost entirely towards uniformity. So that this is the most common agricultural landscape which surrounds us. And we know that this type of agriculture is not feeding the world, is bad for our health, and is bad for the health of the planet. So what is the solution? But if plant breeding is the problem, because it's contributed so much to go towards uniformity, one solution is to change the way in which we do plant breeding. And this is what Benny was mentioning. For many, many years, I've been practicing participatory plant breeding, which is simply a form of collaboration between scientific institutions and farmers, in which the scientific institution is generating a lot of diversity. The diversity goes directly in farmers' fields. Farmers, in an inclusive way, do selection. They produce their own variety, produce their own seed, and that the best material that they select is recycled to the institutions for another cycle of selection. This method of doing plant breeding had a lot of successes and recognitions. Because it empowers farmers, it generates spatial and temporal agrobiodiversity, improves resilience, increases adaptation, but also from a pure breeding point of view, is much more efficient. We did this work in several countries, in North Africa, the Horn of Africa, the Middle East, and with several crops. However, this method never became the method of plant breeding done by institutions. And we have been analyzing this phenomenon, and the conclusion is that the major obstacle is the difficulties in sharing the power of taking decisions. And that's why eventually, in the last 10, 12 years of my career, we we actually did not develop, we rediscovered this idea of mixing, so that the field of wheat will be made of, as you see from your left, will be made of plants all different from each other, completely different from a normal crop made of plants all the same. So, but why mixing? Well, because in one shot, we can eat different targets, such as an agriculture that nourishes us and not only feeds us, adapt crops to climate change, increases agricultural biodiversity, recovers farmers' knowledge, protects our health, but generates also income. So it's what one would define as intelligent crops, good for the farmer, for the consumer, and for the planet. But it's also because this is what farmers have always done. In this graph, you can see that for millennia, we have been growing genetic diversity that farmers were using to do their selection. And the seed that they were selecting was also shared with other farmers in the same village or in other villages. At the beginning, I used two terms, which are mixtures and populations. So very often they are used as synonyms, even though they are not synonyms. The difference is that in a mixture, you simply take seed from different varieties of the same crop, you mix them, and then you plant them as a mixture. A population is actually a mixture of seed produced by crossing in all possible combination different varieties. So, for example, in the case of beans, these are different varieties. You see that within each group, there is a certain amount of uniformity. You mix them, and this is what you plant. Mixtures can be static or dynamic. They are static if you make the mixture every time you plant, so that the mixture does not change. Is dynamic if you are using part of the seed that you harvest to plant the following season. And because of a few crosses which are occurring between plants and because of natural selection, that mixture starts evolving and slowly becomes a population. One issue which is always raised is, are conserving and mixing mutually exclusive activities? Well, they are not. This is a collection of 180 chickpea varieties that we introduced recently in Italy. Now, if you want to make a mixture, you take only few seeds from each of these packets and you plant the mixture, but you do not mix all the packets. So on one side, you have the 180 varieties, and on the other side, you have the mixture.
Let me just remind you that we had a few poll questions.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah. I think this was a point where we would show the first question. So Lisa will start the poll now. Lisa?
Yes, the question is still getting answered, and
okay.
I will share the results in a few seconds as soon as it stops to move. Okay, I see 40% of the participants answered that they were involved in a participatory research program already, and 63% haven't yet.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I think you can show the second question straight away, because this was meant for this part of the presentation.
Okay, so we can see here the results of 8% of the participants who answered that unlikely, 4%, 23% very likely, And in between, we have 4% who answered rather unlikely. Let's see, 33% is on the scale is number 3. So not sure, and 29% answered rather likely.
Well, we may ask the same question at the end to see whether the proportion will change. Can I continue?
Sure.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Now, behind all these, there is a very wide scientific evidence which has shown over the years which started nearly 100 years ago with this paper by Harry Arlan and Mary Martini in US. And that science over the years has shown that the populations and mixtures are able to adjust their phenology, flowering and maturity, depending on where they're grown. They evolve, becoming more and more productive. But these are examples of 2 barley populations and 2 lima beans populations, which over time they get better and better, reaching or even overcoming this line equal to 100, which is the yield of a standard variety. They improve their disease resistance. You see, these are our experiments in Nepal. And in the middle, you can see these tall columns. One is a local variety and the other is a commercial variety. And they have a very high level of disease, while all the mixtures, which are the first 4 and the last 3, have a level of disease much lower. They are also very good in stability, mostly intended as stability over time, which means their production is much more regular from one year to the next than commercial varieties. And particularly in the crops grown as dense crops, such as cereals, they are very good in controlling weeds, which can be further increased by replacing the row planting with the broadcast planting. So this is an example of a mixture of populations of bread wheat that we made in Syria. This is made of thousands of different genetically different plants. And because of natural crosses, recombination and natural selection, the populations evolve, but it's also very, very resistant to pests and diseases. Therefore, does not require the use of chemicals and therefore ideal for organic agriculture. So these populations basically combine a mitigation and an adaptation strategy to cope with climate change. But most importantly, they bring back the control of seed into farmers' hands, not so much for ideological reasons, but for biological reasons, because there cannot be better seed than the seed which is evolving under your own feet. ALSIA started becoming interested in bean mixtures. As you see from the graph, is a small region in the south of Italy. In that region, climbing beans are very popular. The traditional way is that they climb around a corn plant. In the mountains, corn has been replaced by a wooden stick. This is a field at 1,200 meters elevation. And more recently, this is the commercial way of growing climbing beans. We started in 2017. This was the year in which I came back to Italy with a relatively small experiment. We did selection in the field with farmers and sometimes even with students, both in the field and on the dry beans in different settings, depending on the weather. And this is how a mixture of beans looks like in the field and as dry seeds. Just as some very quick data, the yield is comparable to the best varieties and is much higher than the improved varieties, the 2 indicated with I. Also, the farmer preference was pretty good. These are the averages of 2 locations in this initial year, which are confirming what we observe in the station. And it was in 2017 that during a pizza dinner, actually my wife had the idea of suggesting, why don't we cook them? And we see whether they differ in cooking time. So we asked the students of an institution, of an institute, which is training a young chef to do this for us. And they do the cooking of all the 20 plus varieties. And they came out with this result, that they can be grouped in 4 groups where the cooking time within each group is very similar, so that they can be cooked as a mix. And it was in that year that this idea had success. So this is where ALSIA is located, and the farmer nearby started the first commercial production of the mixtures in these packets, depending on the type of mixture that you have seen before, with this label, which eventually was slightly modified. Then, because of the success of this first year, ALSIA decided to go on and to increase the number of varieties and the number of mixtures. And we had this experiment for 3 years, 2018, 19, and 20, where we had some problems with COVID because it was not possible to have meetings. So we developed the system of remote evaluation by putting these dry beans on the screen with a plot number, and the farmers were doing by remote their evaluation. And again, the result came out with reasonably good production. That's the average of 2 locations in 3 years. Also very good acceptance by the farmer, both in the field and as dry beans. And therefore, last year, farmers decided to have trials only with the mixtures, including 4 mixtures done by one of the farmers, who you will see shortly. And so this is the setting of the experiment. Unfortunately, because of COVID, one of the locations we were not able to plant. And these are the farmers doing their evaluation and during one of these field days. And as a result, now from that initial farmer, the mixture has been done by other 5 farmers in the same region. And recently, last week, we went down to do an evaluation. These are very briefly the results. Again, the mixtures have a yield which is higher or similar to the best varieties, also in terms of number of pods per plant. And this is the setting of this final evaluation that we did last week. We went to an agricultural institute. We spread the packets over these tables with 2 packets per table. And I would like you to look carefully at this packet, because this was a mixture of 3 varieties. Now, if you look carefully, you will see many more colors. This was planted 4 years ago, and then this is actually a dynamic mixture, and you see how many more types are showing up. So we did a very quick evaluation with farmers and students, and then we did a cooking test. Now, because of logistic reasons, we only did the cooking on 5 mixtures, so you see 5 bowls. And then we had groups of 8 people. That's why you see 8 small dishes. This is the setting. Each one was in a cubicle, was given a dish with a form to fill. They were drinking a glass of water between mixtures, so that the taste of a mixture did not affect the other. And this on your left is a farmer who actually makes his own mixtures. And then, because it was getting very late, also myself and my wife joined the tasting because it was about lunchtime. Now, all these also has an international connotation. We are working together with my wife on this project supported by the International Fund for Agricultural Development in Uganda, Ethiopia, Jordan, Iran, Bhutan, and Nepal. And in 3 of these countries, we are actually working on beans: Uganda, Nepal, and Bhutan. At the moment, we have completed the analysis of data from Nepal, from this location called Jumla in the middle of the Himalaya. And they were using 4 mixtures made either with land races, with local land races, with land races from other regions, or with improved lines, or with mixing land races and improved varieties. But most importantly, farmers in the first year of the experiment did their selection within the mixture. So they selected the best plants. And these are the results. As you can see on your right, you have the 3 columns with the selection from the farmers. And then you see that the yield, particularly in the last year, is a little bit higher than any of the other mixtures and of the improved and the local variety. So the same is for two diseases. So these are anthracnose. And again, the height means that the crop was very much affected. And you see that the most affected were the locally improved, particularly in 2020, when the disease was very severe. And the same for mosaic virus. And in both cases, the mixtures were much less affected.
Salvatore, what means log and imp?
Sorry? Log means local and imp means improved. It improved varieties. And the height is a negative factor, because the higher is the column, the more serious is the disease. Now, I would like to conclude with using this editorial from Nature, which appeared very recently, entitled "Democratizing Food Systems." The article basically tells us something that we know very well, namely that a limited number of actors have a great influence on what, where, when, and how food is grown, processed, and distributed. And what is interesting is that the article is mentioning innovation, which are needed to get out of this loop. And among the innovation is including seed-saving networks. And therefore, mixtures and evolutionary populations not only bring back diversity in our agriculture and on our table, but by bringing back seed control in farmers' hands, contribute to democratize the food system. Thank you.
Thank you too. Could you share the presentation?
So Salvatore, would you share the presentation? Could we?
Of course.
Yes, thank you very much. So
is available. Is available already with Lisa and Romain as a PDF.
Yes, I'm going to send the link in the chat now. And after the meeting, we will send to every participant again the link. Thank you very much, Salvatore.
Okay, so what are the questions to Salvatore? If you want to ask a question, you can, at the moment, you can just speak, but later on, probably just raise your hand and we will have an overview. My question to kick off to you, Salvatore, is number one, how do you market such mixtures? I've seen the picture that you showed, that there are bags for sale on this. Do you see a significant larger market for these kind of mixtures, say also in supermarkets? Are there experiences with this?
Well, at the moment, with the bean mixtures, which is the most recent development, but also with the products of the populations of bread wheat and durum wheat, basically mostly bread and pasta. Also, we had a population of zucchini. they all go in local markets. So usually they feed in short supply chains by small association. This is in the case of pasta and bread. In the case of beans, the original farmer, the one with the glasses on the left of that picture that I've shown, he has agritourism. So he started offering the beans to the clients of his agritourism. And at the end of the lunch, some of these clients start asking where we can buy these mixtures. So we start packing them, and then there are few shops around which start selling them. And because of the success, now we are trying out of 5 locations in the region. We do not envisage that these mixtures go too far away from the place where they're grown. What we try to export from this experience is the idea. In the case of beans, it's very easy because there is an incredible amount of diversity of beans in almost every region in Italy. And the same is happening also for crops which are traveling much more easily, such as wheat and barley. There is a tendency for these populations and these products to remain in the region in which they are cultivated. And to be honest with you, Benny, I will be really worried if I can see Barilla selling a pasta made of a mixture.
Okay, thank you. Next question from my good old friend Nikos Charalambidis, who has grown a gray beard since we last met. Please, Nikos.
First, we last met some 20 years ago. Second, I think that Nicholas Carlton was before me, Benny. Nicholas?
Yeah, but go ahead, Nikos, please.
Is it okay? Okay. Thank you, Benny. Long time no see. We talk about beers and hairs and stuff. What's next, anybody? Another time.
I think I remember you.
Oh gosh.
Well, I mean, but you actually made a compliment to me, which means that I did not age that much.
Thanks, Salvatore.
And I basically reciprocate the compliment.
My first question was similar to Benny's, about how to market the product, especially how to marketing a product is also related to how convenient it is. One of the key questions for any consumer about beans is how fast or how slow they are in cooking. And by the time you mix varieties, there's already a kind of resistance. Whoa, how long does it take? This take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours to cook them. That's my first question. So how to make it convenient to the consumer. The second question was somehow already answered by you, and that is, do we really want to make this mainstream? Can it become mainstream? Can we envisage big supermarket chains embracing it and turning it to their own product? And my answer is no, but I wanted to get your feedback on that, your response to that. Thank you.
Well, the first question is that, you know, in those packets, because these particular mixtures started with a test on cooking time, on the label, farmers can choose between a quick and a slow. There is a range in these 4 mixtures in terms of cooking time. So depending on their lifestyle, the time that they have, they can make a choice. What we were told, and this was very surprising, these students of this institute, which is training young chefs, not only did the test for us, returning the cooking time of each variety, but by curiosity, they decided to cook the mixture. And they told us that the flavor and the taste of the 4 mixtures is much better than the flavor and the taste of each individual variety, including a very famous one that I forgot to mention because I was afraid of running out of time. One of these variety is so typical of that region, and it is so good that has got a denomination of origin protected. Well, for a bean in that region to taste better than that variety, it takes something. And I think that this rumor, then the taste and the flavor of products of a mixture, and this is now is happening with bread, is happening with pasta, is happening with tomatoes, is happening with zucchini, is spreading, so that and the fact that they are coming from farmers who are your neighbor gives you a confidence also on the way in which they are cultivated. And despite all the difficulties, we can see that there is a growing concern, particularly among young families, of the relationship between food and health. And therefore, I do not envisage that this material will get in the supermarket. Also because, as Benny mentioned, basically the central concept of everything I'm doing is that the seed must be controlled by the farmers. Because otherwise, because the seed, if you think about, is the beginning of everything. So if the seed is produced by somebody else, and you are obliged to buy it, after that you can do whatever you want, but you already have some limits, and the limits are imposed by the way in which that seed has been selected and produced.
Thank you. Nicola, now your turn.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, Salvatore, for the nice presentation. I have one question about cooking time also with this mixture. You showed us the beautiful package with these very colorful beans of more than 3 different sizes and colors. You said it was initially from 3 varieties. So the fact that it had been grown in a dynamic mixture had made some other types emerge. Now, did you notice that sometimes you also got some other cooking times that emerge within this diversity from the 3 varieties that you have in the beginning? Maybe do you recommend using the other type of mixtures, not the dynamic ones, but the static ones, then where you mix the 3 original beans every year?
Yeah, well, there is always a possibility of what, genetically speaking, transgressive segregation. We were hoping, and until now, this is what happened, that because of the similarity in cooking time, even if these varieties are crossing with each other, the amount of recombination, we don't know exactly what the genetic basis of cooking time is. If it's not too complex, there shouldn't be too much deviation from what was the average cooking time of the original mixture. But in the case of mixture, there is always this possibility. I will give you an example which is fairly known to people familiar with Africa. In the northern part of Ethiopia and in Eritrea, one of the most famous static mixture is a mixture between species. I mean, farmers are growing a mix of barley and wheat. And exactly for the reason that you are saying, this is a static mixture, because farmers are saying barley is more resistant to drought than wheat, and wheat is more resistant to lodging than barley, so that the 2 crops are complementing each other. But if you plant that mixture in a dry year, the seed that you harvest is mostly barley seed. And if you're using that seed for next year, and the following year is a wet year, you are basically losing a lot of yield, because the major contributor to yield is wheat. Basically, depending on circumstances, farmers can choose between these 2 strategies. If you mix something and you find that the product has a as a very large commercial success, you don't want that mixture to evolve. And there is enough evidence in the scientific research that the mixture doesn't need to evolve to be, for example, resistant to diseases. The only question mark is whether they will be able to cope with a climate which is very different from the climate of today.
Just to make sure, thanks a lot for the answer and the nice example. Now, in these 4 years of the project, have you noticed that one of the mixtures started to evolve with different cooking times that were then problematic when cooking or not?
Well, sorry, I forgot to, that particular mixture was on the table, was also one of those that we tested. And we did not find in the sample which was cooked that there was a difference that you can perceive by eating the mixture, that there were some substantial differences between cooking time.
Fiona.
Okay, thank you. I have maybe a very naive question. So you told us about also the taste advantages of the mixtures compared to single varietals. But my impression, and I might have picked you up wrong, is that you would not support making such mixtures, if you like, commercially available to a broad population. And I'm curious to know why. I can see two aspects, but I'm curious to know why you would say people who live in big cities should not be able to buy these beans because they will only be available locally close to the producers.
Well, you know, but for example, people who are not in the region where ALSIA is doing this work, I know several other farmers in Italy or several other associations working in regions where they have their own beans. I don't see any reasons why the bean mixtures, which are very well adapted to that region in Italy, should travel all the way up to North Italy, where they have other beans, and they could make mixtures with their own beans. I'm not sure whether I understood your questions because the audio was not very good.
Okay, sorry. Maybe I don't know if that's any better now. I've moved a little bit closer. So it was just for me to understand whether it is a general feeling that such, because I guess you want mixtures to be adopted as broadly as possible for the reasons you mentioned, with different mixtures in different places, but if you like, the philosophy of mixtures to be adopted. But then I think there needs to be some way of making the fruits of those mixtures available to the consumers who are looking to use them as food.
Well, they can be, I mean, for example, at the moment, consider that these bean mixtures started in 2017. The bread wheat and the durum wheat populations started in 2008 and 2009 in Syria. The first country they went was Iran. And now in Iran, there are 4 shops, 4 organic shops in Tehran where you can buy bread from these evolutionary populations. There are several regions, several provinces in Iran where you can find these products. It's just a matter of time. In Italy, you can buy bread and pasta from evolutionary population in several places, but usually in each place, the bread and the pasta are made from crops which have been grown nearby. Also because we are always talking about a relatively small amount. So in the case, for example, of bread wheat and durum wheat, you need to have a small mill a small bakery, a small pasta making factories. We are lucky in Italy that we still have some of these, so that actually there is a quite a large body of consumers. I mean, I've been recently up in Milano. In Milano, there is one bakery who is making, I think, close to 5,000 loaves of bread from evolutionary population in a city like Milano. We have now 2 farmers growing the evolutionary population on the outskirts of Rome. And Rome has a tradition of using very good bread, which has been lost over time. So that even in big cities of the dimension of Rome and Milano, you have quite a lot of agricultural activities just in the surrounding areas, which can feed part of the town. Of course, the more clients will start appreciating this product, so more farmers will start growing it. But we are trying, as Benny was mentioning, we are and Nikos, we are afraid that by getting in supermarket, unless we have arrangements like what I've seen in France, where even in the Carrefour, you have corners where farmers can go. I don't know what is the management arrangement where they have to pay a rent, but within a supermarket, then you have a corner, a sort of farmer corner in which farmers can sell their products so that they can actually be presented to a wider number of clients.
So there's room for expansion.
Sorry?
There's room for expansion as more and more farmers become involved.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is what is happening, for example, with those crops in which this philosophy was applied earlier. Now, for example, the populations of bread wheat and durum wheat are grown. Well, durum wheat has got, of course, a geographical limitation, but bread wheat is grown from Sicily up to Piedmont. So in each region, you have a number of farmers, a number of millers. For example, in the region where I live, we also have restaurants which started serving bread and pasta from evolutionary populations. So, of course, you need, for example, in the case of beans, you have this unusual look of different colors. In the case of bread from evolutionary population, the bread is much darker. In the case of pasta, it's the same. Also, the pasta is much darker. So you have to overcome this first visual impression. But for example, we go to a fish restaurant very often, and the owner was telling me that at the beginning, customers were rather reluctant when he put a small basket with his slice of darker bread than normal, or bread which was darker than normal. And then last time I was there, he was telling me that the number of clients asking him, do you still have some of this brown bread? Is increasing because when you taste it, you know, it's not even a matter of having a very fine ability to distinguish. I mean, the difference in taste is so enormous so that everybody will notice it.
Great, thank you.
Salvatore, I have a question to you. Sorry, I know that we still had some questions from the survey poll that I wondered if you still wanted to launch them for the last 2 minutes.
Yes, please.
Is there one question especially that you think would be most relevant? I can tell you the ones that are left. We asked, there was one about the traits that are important when we consider mixtures. Then a question about is, as a farmer or gardener, how likely we would be to grow mixtures, and if we would grow bean mixture in a restaurant.
But Lisa, you told me that every question will take about 2 minutes. So 2 by 3 will make 6 minutes. And I think we still have 6 minutes.
Okay, well, we can try that. Let's try it.
Yeah.
If everyone is fast enough, maybe we will manage. Great. Number 4. Okay, here we go.
While we are voting, Salvatore, and as you mentioned, you don't want Barilla to sell the mixtures, actually. I very well remember Paolo Barilla, one of the 3 brothers, complaining to me about his customers. He said, every additional cooking minute in my pasta costs me 20% of consumer acceptance. So I think going for the slow way is really the best.
Benny,
Okay.
did Paolo also tell you how he did to cut down the cooking time of his pasta?
No, unfortunately not.
Because this is the problem.
He told me that he doesn't like it and he is forced by his customers to do it. And he would love to have long cooking pasta. Okay, here we are with the result, Lisa.
Yes, exactly. I'm wondering if you can see them on the screen. Perhaps I don't even have to gather the results.
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. So let's go to the next question.
So it looks like you made a real impression on the gardening community here, Salvatore, and I think it would be really interesting to probably share a mixture amongst our group of global bean people and see what kind of mixtures we get in the different areas of Europe. If you would be interested in such a unscientific experiment, I would appreciate it, and we would certainly be willing to promote it.
Why unscientific, Benny?
Because we are amateurs in this, right?
No. Benny, we apply.
Avanti dilettanti. I'm not meaning to say it's bad, right? I love unscientific experiments.
Don't forget the wisdom of the crowd.
Exactly. Yeah.
Combination of
Okay.
traits, yes. In fact, that's very good.
And we have a last question. Here we go.
I was wondering if there are already restaurants offering bean mixtures, Salvatore.
Yeah, the restaurant of that agritourism and one of the 5 new farmers who have been growing the bean mixture. I don't remember whether she grew only one type of mixture, so she took all 4 of them. She also established a relationship where she has is part of an association where there are also some restaurants, and she was telling me that there is a restaurant which is also interested in putting tentatively on the menu to see how customers are reacting. So this process will be not surprisingly, will be very slow. You need to accustom people to eat something different, which is not very good. But our experience is that once customers get acquainted to the new taste, the major problem is to make sure that there is enough material to sell, because what we fear is actually not so much about Barilla, but is about the number of customers ready to buy this product and to cook it at home or to look for restaurants where these are served, which is above the capacity of the farmers to produce enough of these.
Yeah, okay.
So we need to keep a balance because, you know, before farmers can embark in growing something completely new, they need to know that they're going to sell it. And in order to sell it, there could be customers who are going to buy it. So
Yeah.
the two things should go hand in hand.
Business is so complicated. A very last question, very short from Elizabeth, and a very short answer from Salvatore.
Hey, I hope it's not repetition. I had to join a bit later, but could you describe the taste difference a bit more in detail? Because I think that many times we're lacking a bit the language of describing beans, and it would be great to hear your perception or the outcome of the sensory analysis.
Well, I'm afraid you're asking that question to the wrong person. I frequently miss the taste of one fish for another fish, so I do not have that fine. But this group of students and farmers, they were all telling me, I said, that the difference is incredible. More than the taste, than what you feel in your mouth, is actually what you feel in your nose. You know this word flavor, which I'm not a fine connoisseur of English, but I think that is a mix of what you feel in the mouth and also what you feel in the nose. And it's that feeling which is much more in the mixture. In the other one, you have these particular taste where you can distinguish, for example, a borlotto from this local white. But in the mix, you have a melange of all these flavors. So it's very difficult to distinguish, but it's so pleasant.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
But
now we're coming to the advertising block. We're coming to the advertising block for our next session. And Svetlana Balashevich, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, will briefly introduce you to the intercropping session we will have in April. Please, Svetlana. And I think Lisa will show pictures with it, right?
Okay, thank you, Benny. Good pronunciation of my surname. Yeah, Balashevich is okay. And my sense is that our topic, our presentation will be continuation of discussion about crops mixtures, but from other point of view, it means to close to cropping systems that are in line with diversification of agriculture, and also it means pathway to sustainability that will be in line with lower use of fertilizers, of pesticides, that is Green Deal goals. And it will be, this presentation, it will be consist of 3 parts. First will be short introduction that I said, and after that will be the main part that will be presented from expert of intercropping, my colleague Jura Karagic, dealing with intercropping 20 years. And now he provides some testing and some trials. And I invite him to present really benefits of intercropping in practice for gardeners, for farmers, both It means conventional agriculture and organic agriculture, because colleague Gyura Karagic dealing with organic culture. And after that, we want invite discussion, because intercropping is a new cropping system in some regions. In some regions is well known, but we know that farmers or gardeners are skeptic or not always open to accept innovating cropping system. And we want to open discuss with this third part of presentation, open discuss about motivation for farmers and gardeners to adopt intercropping, or maybe potential barriers about that, because this discussion about crop mixtures is really amazing, with many questions that Salvatore really was successful in presenting this topic. And we also want to initiate a discussion about that, because this is really something new in cropping system that is really with high beneficial effects for everything, for soil, for yield, for diseases, for everything. That is all for now.
That is all for now. To get you all back in April, if you want to register, you will find the link to the registration right in the chat. And before we leave, Lisa has a little update on our ongoing contest, right?
Exactly. I just need 1 more minute. Thank you for your patience. It's just to remind you that we are starting the season of sowing and planting, and right now starts also the fastest bean contest that we are launching. It's very easy to participate. You just need to write down the sowing dates of your favorite legume that you are now sowing, or that you will soon start to sow. And please write now in the chat in case you have already sowed a legume, so we can keep track and see already who is participating. So you can add your email address right now in the chat, and or send after the meeting an email to bean@ with the date. That would be fantastic. And later, once your plant has reached 1 meter, you will be able to send us a picture. And as soon as we receive the first pictures and also the first sowing dates, we will add them into our landing page. We will add the link also in the chat for you to follow the advancement. The final step is once the plant has reached the final height, probably later this year, and we can compare and see which plant is actually the highest. So this is what I was just mentioning with the link to the landing page. We will also post it in our Instagram account, so you can also have a good overview there about what's happening this season. And in the next year's Seed Festival, we will have an exhibition with the highest and fastest bean varieties that you have sent to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you to all of you, but most of all, of course, thank you to Salvatore, to this brilliant introduction to a whole world of mixing. I think this has a lot of meaning to us, well beyond the beans, that this type of intermixing and creating innovation from within is something that can make gardeners happy and can help a lot with the future of farming, actually. Thanks a lot, Salvatore, and I hope we will see you all back again in April when Svetlana will take us to the intercropping, and here you also see what you can have from us. Especially, we would like to invite you to subscribe to our newsletter. You will receive the first. There has not been any newsletter published yet, but before the next meeting, you will see the first newsletter of the Global Bean. And so don't miss it. Please do subscribe. And thanks a lot to all of you, and good luck, good health, and have a nice evening. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye. Thank you.